Thanks for hanging in there with me, brother. Tackling your Texas Star. I guess you can see here it got bent up a little during shipping, unless it was like that already, so I'm going to do my best to get that bent back. I see this all the time. That's why I really do emphasize people to package their Texas Stars up well. Please use good big fat bubble wrap from your local UPS or whatever supplier you have laying around. It won't show up like this because you can't trust those handlers, man. Well, first I noticed there wasn't no power flowing through the amp, and I had to trace it down and track it down. I'd say this is the first right here, but these caps aren't exactly the most expensive caps. That's acting as a coupler and as a blocking capacitor. I am also now suspect to these two blocking caps as well, which I will check, but at least we got power flowing through the amp now. So next is check through the damage it caused. So hang in there with me, we'll be back. I need to get all that fixed before I even do any power wire upgrades or anything like that, brother. Alrighty, Chuck, we're all done with your Texas Star 667 from Copper Electronics. And every once in a while I'll throw a little bit of humor in there with a customer. I hit him up earlier. There's some guy that sent a Texas Star to me. It had 3 big gaping holes in the top lid that was not uniform with each other, and I was just so like, what are those holes there for? So I sent him a text and I'm like, hey Chuck, what are these holes in your Texas Star? Just kind of curious where those come from. Whoa, I ain't got no holes in my Texas Star. I like to do that every once in a while, just picking at the customer, man. There's been a couple of times you know, somebody send me a big amp and I'll throw a Texas Star Mod V on the table and shoot them a picture. Be like, all right, buddy, your amp's all done, man, ready to go. I'll get this Mod V packaged up for you. Whoa, I sent you a 12-pill Gatekeeper. I think I got that from an old buddy of mine growing up. Used to hang out with this guy. We called him the fat white guy because he was fat, but he called himself that. That was his own nickname he gave himself. But I remember we'd get done installing somebody's. We used to install mobile amplifiers, you know, mobile audio equipment back when we were younger, and we'd get done with somebody's car, and they'd be, you know, waiting for about 4 or 5 hours, and all of a sudden we'd be like, oh man, and he'd be like, oh God, and they'd be like, what's wrong? We'd be like, we're done. I think that's where I got that from. Anyway, on to the nitty gritty. All right, brother. I believe we've already talked about what was causing your main issue here. Was this cap right here had popped. Okay. After getting that fixed, I noticed there was still another issue with the amplifier. The bias was fine. Everything was fine with it. It was actually putting out, but I was still seeing a trail of smoke coming right here. And I have seen this before. There's one time I'll never forget on a Texas Star one time. Every time I keyed the mic, I'd see a little flame come up right here. So basically what had happened during that being took out, my guess is after this was took out, this issue was caused over here. So basically there had been a little bit of solder that had dripped from this leg right here on the 10 microhenry choke that was touching the frame. And if I had not had that issue happen before in the past, it may have took me about an hour or so to figure it out, to be honest with you. It still took me about 20-30 minutes to trace it down, because it can be tricky at times. What blew my mind though was the bias was still reading fine. Now how crazy is that? It's almost, it's sometimes things can get just perfect to where there's not a short, but it's like as soon as RF goes through it, it's almost like I ain't saying it flexes, but something happens with the electromagnetic field that will actually cause a short. I've seen it happen time and time again. RF can do some crazy things. I might not be able to find the actual words to describe what I'm trying to say, but I'm sure a lot of people out there that's watching this may know what I'm talking about. Like, you can sit there and not have a DC short, all right, but as soon as you put RF through it, there's an RF short. Well, what this was doing was there was solder dripping down, touching this frame, but the bias was still showing fine, which blew my mind. You know, you would think there'd be a short right there at the frame, okay, and the bias would not be showing, because I'm looking at the bias with this relay being actuated, but it was still showing fine. But it was enough for when I was audioing, that little drip of solder that was hanging down was starting to smoke. And you could see it coming up, trails of smoke right here. I was like, man, what in the world? And I got my little book of knowledge. You know, if I ever see a new, something new with a Texas Star, I'll write it down in my little book of knowledge. I started looking through there, man, and luckily, about a year and a half ago, I had something similar happen with a Texas Star. So, but anyway, man, we got that fixed, and this thing's rolling fine now. We've done a full power wire upgrade at your request. Okay, and I staggered the power wires right here. It just makes it easier run for the ground over here instead of having to come from right here straight over. I think I'm gonna start doing that now on 667s. On 500s, I'll put the power, ground, in that kind of order. Throw you a little bit of extra capacitance. I may actually start doing this too. Not nothing really needed, just gives you a little bit more filter capacitance on the DC. So I went ahead and did that for you. Full power wire upgrade, 14 gauge all the way to the back of the transformer. This right here is 16 gauge going to the back of the MOSFET driver section. Went ahead and got your Anderson SP175 power poles, and you also needed 3 foot of wire to go to your battery or power source, whatever you're going to be using. I'm out of my new Concepts wire. I tell you what, I can't keep that stuff in stock, man. I'm just going to have to go ahead and order 500 feet. But I had some real stiff, I like to use stiff when it's good and hardcore, you know. I got some real good monster cable here. I've just kind of been hanging on this cable for a while. Thought I'd have some use for it. And this is all I had of this cable, about 4 foot. So I'm going to go ahead and send this with you. I went ahead and put SP175 power poles on the end of it for you already. And we got it hooked up right now. Alright, bud. We'll start off on low. And we'll just leave that all the way up. Alright. 1000 watt slug, that's PEP. We got 1000 in RMS. Oh, a little bit under 400 watts. Oh, about 100 bird. Alright. We'll go ahead and take it off. Well, that wasn't the lowest setting. What was I thinking? No, that is the lowest setting. Alright, let's go to medium. Oh, about 450. 460, 470. Oh, about 160 RMS. Alright, now let's go to medium high. Oh, about 500. Oh, right there about 200 bird. Input reflect, 5 watt slug in reverse. Oh, I didn't even have to adjust the input on this thing, man. Everything was good to go. Alright, we'll go ahead and go to high. 600 watts. Right there about 300 bird. Alright, bud. Some of these newer amps like this, man, I don't know how new it is. That's the thing about it. It's going to be one or two things. These are DEIs, or these are HGs or DEI tops. And I am going to lean towards them being possibly DEIs, but I cannot say for sure without taking the top off of them. All I know is when I get the newer Texas stars in that I'm talking about, it's within a year old, I'd say probably about a year, just kind of going off the top of my head, they're going to be HGs. I mean, it is what it is. I hope I ain't getting no trouble saying that by a certain somebody, but they're HGs. And a lot of times the HG versions of these 667s, they're going to do anywhere from what that right there, about 600 up to 700 watts with my bench radio. Now if I hook my hot radio up right now, it's going to do over 700 watts. 750, somewhere around there. And of course you can do it a kilowatt if you hook it up and turn the voltage up. We're about 14.3 volts right now. So yep, I didn't show 667, but it is what it is, man. DEIs with the MOSFET driver. Like I said, I really can't say if these are actual DEIs or the current DEIs, which are HGs. 08-4s, the ones I picked out. God, what are we going on now? 3 or 4 years? Can't remember. But anyway, oh, your fan. Alright. Fans are on low right now. You've got a switch down here. There's high. That's blowing, that's scooching some air right there for sure. And some of the fans all have a high, off, low switch, a SPDT switch. This right here is still an SPDT, but it's just an on-off switch. So you've got high, up, and lows down is going to be low. Okay, that's your 2 speeds for your fans. Alright, brother, just for the heck of it, we'll hook up, well, I don't really, look, let me tell you like this right here, okay? Now, let me show you here. Alright, this resistor right here is something that's needed on most 667s, and some it's not, okay? Because you have a 75 right here. This right here is an extra attenuation, because on some of these 667s, the gain is so high on them. A 1 watt dead key will have this thing dead keying 300 bird. Okay, now I am dead keying about 1 watt right now. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn that peak kit off so I won't forget. All right, we got this thing full throttle. Let's see how much she's dead keying. Now see, that is very, very acceptable. Alright, I'm saying that to say this. If you were somebody that was very power hungry and you want to see that extra 667 watts out of it, to see that 667 watts out of a 4 watt radio, which my radio is actually a 3 watt radio now. My bench radio does a little bit less power than the one I was using about half a year, 6 months, 7 months ago. But this could be removed. This is one of the 667s where this can be removed. Okay, but I just leave it in there, man. But I'm just letting you know, if you absolutely just wanted to see, since this thing is not balls to walls already. Now, a lot of times they will add these in here. Some of these 667s that come through here, even with this in here, with a 1 watt dead key, the thing's dead keying 300 watts. It's just because it's just the transistors are good gain, the driver's working real well, and it is what it is. But if you run this like this, since I don't even know if these are HGs or DEIs, I just leave this in here, man. What's 67 watts, you know? I can hook my hot radio up right now and show you 750, but I ain't into that no more, man. You see me doing that a lot on the older videos. You know, I'd push the amps to their max. You know, things have changed now. Toshibas are so hard to get a hold of. They're so expensive. All right. And then Chinese transistors like this, I don't want to be the one handing the amp back to you with 10, 15, you know, HFE lower than it came here in. So if you want to run the amp hard, I'm gonna let you do that. You know, you'll see me key hotter radios at times when they're amps to where I don't feel like I'm driving the heck out of them. If this was a 500, I'd go ahead and hook my hot radio up. But I'm just gonna let it be. It's doing about 300 bird now. That's great. You can still get another 100 bird out of it, but just keep in mind it's a Texas Star. Me personally, on my 667s, I run them about 300 bird and lower. That's just my personal opinion. That's what I like to do. If it's a Toshiba, yeah, I'll run it at 400, but Chinese transistors, 300 or lower. But this is set up to where it can be safe for you, man. I personally wouldn't put any more than 2 watts dead key into it myself. Just take a look at it on the RMS reading watt meter, okay? Make sure you're not swinging backwards on the RMS reading watt meter. I have a lot of people ask me, how much dead key do I put in my amp? I don't know. You tell me. That's what I tell. You tell me. They're like, is that are you trying to be a butthole? No, I don't know. And then I explain it to them. It ain't me telling you how much dead key to put in your amp. You figure that out yourself with the proper instruments. And of course, I'm gonna tell you a nominal, you know, about 1 or 2 watts is all I do in about any amp, man, unless it's a high drive. But check your RMS reading watt meter, okay, and make sure you're not swinging backwards. And as you can see with the way I'm running this now, I'm not swinging backwards. Now, if the more I raise my dead key, the less forward swing RMS that I have. You want a certain ratio to where you are swinging forward on the RMS reading watt meter. Because I could take that thing to where I'm dead keying 400 watts right now, and I'm swinging back to 300. All right, and I go over to the peak meter, and it's going to show me swinging forward. It's going to show me dead keying 400 watts, swinging forward. That's because the peak meter, that's what it's designed to do, is show you that peak, the peak envelope power. But at the same time, you could be saturating, oversaturating your transistors. Everybody should invest in an RMS reading watt meter, even if it's a cheap dozy or something. At least some RMS reading watt meter so you can check it out. My golden rule is best to not be swinging at all than to be swinging back. The old Gatekeeper said that. We good and gone. 73, bud. Thanks for hanging in there with me too, by the way, man. You can go ahead and get this out to you. And the lid, by the way, that I use for your fan kit is the new lids. And they are nice. And they are more expensive too. And they're so nice that I've actually quit painting. I was painting the bottom and the top of the lids with my fan kits, but these right here are so nice. One of the biggest reasons I was painting them like that is when I make these fan kits, the vinyl on it would bend back a little where I'm cutting the holes. The inside is a gray color, a type of primer. You know, it would get scuffed up, this and that, and I'd like to put a fresh coat after making the fan kit and make it look real nice. Well, these are a nice powder coated paint, so they're not getting scuffed up like that as much during the process of me cutting the holes. So they look great. I don't see any need to put a paint job on that. It looks great. Saved me a little bit of time. Hey, I wasn't getting paid extra to put that paint on there anyway for everybody. But if I ever get a hold of some of these older style cases, well, you call them old now, like these, you know, I will. But this looks great next to each other. I don't see any reason to put paint on it. It looks great. All right, buddy. Appreciate it, Chuck. 73 to you, bud, and everybody watching. God bless. Gatekeepers gone. The same cheesy old logo. About time for a change, ain't it, y'all?